Welcome to this edition of World Business Commentary. My name is Belinda Boggs and my co-host is Kristen Ciccarello. Today's topic is the labor market and the Great Resignation. Since the recovery from the pandemic, there has been a persistent shortage of labor. Too many jobs and not enough people to fill them. We're going to get to the bottom of what's happening. Kristen, can you start us off by giving us some background on the U.S. labor market? What's been going on?
Of course. Let me begin by quoting a paper issued by the U.S. Chamber of Commerce in March of 2023. Quote, "The pandemic caused a major disruption in America's labor force, something many have referred to as the Great Resignation. In 2022, more than 50 million workers quit their jobs, many of whom were in search of an improved work-life balance and flexibility, increased compensation, and a strong company culture. But a closer look at what has happened to the labor force can be better described as the Great Reshuffle because hiring rates have outpaced quit rates since November of 2020. So, many workers are quitting their jobs, but many are getting rehired elsewhere. So, that's the so-called Great Resignation. People quitting and moving on to other organizations. But, let's understand that this wouldn't be possible if there weren't more positions to fill than people available to fill them. So, we still need to answer the question, why is there an unbalance in the labor market? Similar to the housing market, demand is outstripping supply. Also, similar to the housing market, Fed Reserve Chairman Powell wants to bring demand down to meet supply by slowing down the economy.
Wow. There's a lot that you've said already. You mean the Fed wants to reduce demand for labor by slowing the economy down? Why?
Well, it's very simple. In his mind, slowing the economy down will bring wage growth down and hence, inflation. But, we've already talked about this in a previous episode. Unless Powell still believes in the Phillips curve, which says that inflation and unemployment are inversely related, then this makes no sense. And in that previous episode, we explained that the Phillips curve has been proven false by the stagflation of the 1970s and the economy of the 2010s. I believe that the problem is again on the supply side. We need to understand why the supply of labor isn't where it needs to be to meet demand. Why aren't there enough workers to fill the positions? Where did they go? A report from October 2022 shed some light on what's going on. 2/3 of Americans who became unemployed during the pandemic say they are only somewhat active or not very active at all in searching for a new job. Over half of those who lost their full-time job during the pandemic agree that it is essential to return to full-time work as soon as possible, while 26% say it will never be essential. Nearly 1 in 5 have altered their livelihood, 17% have retired, 19% have transitioned to homemaker, and 14% are now working part-time. By the way, for you out there watching on YouTube, if you like what you've heard so far, please subscribe to our channel and give us a big thumbs up.
Great. Now back to the labor market. That was interesting stuff. I had been wondering what happened to all of the people. Now, it appears a bunch of them have left the labor force. So, what can be done to address the shortage?
Well, one thing I don't think we should be doing is trying to shrink the economy in response, which is what may well happen with the steep interest rate increases we've been seeing from the Federal Reserve. Causing a recession is hardly the right way to handle this, in my humble opinion.
Okay. So, what can be done? If you're saying that we shouldn't be trying to shrink demand for labor, how can we possibly increase supply?
Great question. I've been thinking about this a lot lately, and I think there are several things we can do to increase supply. I have 3 ideas. 1. Immigration. Which industries need workers, and how can we create the right incentives to import these workers? 2. The federal workforce. The size of the federal government has grown over recent years, and many of those employed as federal workers can move out of government work and into the private sector. In other words, the government can reduce its workforce, and those former employees can fill the open positions in the private sector. And 3. Innovation. I keep hearing that so many jobs are going to be displaced because of artificial intelligence and technology. Everyone was worried that swaths of people would be unemployed by now. It isn't happening yet, but can some of the open positions be filled by using technology or AI?
Those are bold ideas, and some might even say they're a little crazy, but let's take each one. The first one seems to be the most straightforward. Tell us about immigration.
Immigration is a controversial topic sometimes, but let's be realistic. Immigrants to America from all over the globe were key to America's growth and success in the 20th century. Of course, I'm talking about legal immigration. Can we create incentives to get people who would like to become Americans and have the right skills? This one really shouldn't be hard, but I'm sure it wouldn't be easy, given the way our government has been working lately.
Okay. That one's a pretty straightforward idea. How about number 2? You want to reduce the government workforce?
Well, let's get one thing straight. I don't want to see anyone out of work, but, in this case, they wouldn't be unemployed for long. They would fill some of the open positions in the private sector, and that would be better for the economy. Government spending would go down as a result, which is a good thing when it comes to inflation, as we discussed in a previous episode, and additional supply of labor would enter the private sector labor market, also a good thing. I think it's a win-win.
Interesting. As for your final point, do you really believe that some of the jobs that are open can be filled with artificial intelligence?
That's a great question. This is definitely not something I know much about, but I have done some research. The first thing I did for fun is ask Google's AI chat, called Bard, this question. The first part of its answer was, quote, "It is difficult to say exactly how many open job positions in the US today could be replaced with artificial intelligence instead of hiring humans. This is because the level of automation that is possible with AI is constantly changing and evolving. However, some experts believe that AI could eventually replace a significant number of jobs, particularly in low-skilled and repetitive occupations." The truth is, not only does Bard not know, but estimates are really all over the place on this. I think there might be some merit in it, and that's why I included it as my third idea. However, it's probably the weakest of the 3 ideas.
Great. So, to summarize, the labor market is suffering from a lack of supply stemming from the pandemic. There are now not enough people to fill the open positions. The Federal Reserve's answer to this is to raise interest rates in the hopes that the labor market will cool, meaning that demand will drop. But that will likely end in recession. Your proposal is to increase supply by potentially considering 3 ways. The first is immigration for people who are skilled and can fill these open positions. The second idea is to reduce the size of the government workforce, which has the dual purpose of reducing government spending and increasing the private sector supply of labor. And your third idea, which in truth is the shakiest of the 3, is to use technology and AI to fill some of the positions. This idea is really more like reducing demand, but I'll let it slide. I think that summarizes it, and we covered it all in less than 10 minutes. That's our segment for today. Thanks for watching, and please subscribe and like this video if you enjoyed it.